Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Critical Thinking Out Loud, where we are dedicated to teaching the ancient Near Eastern context of the Bible. And we do this because we've just fallen in love, or at least personally, I have fallen in love with the ancient Near Eastern context of the Bible and interpreting the scriptures through its original context, which is the ancient Near East. And so basically, that's one of the big things we harp on here at Critical Thinking Out Loud is we need to interpret the scriptures through its original context, and we want to teach you how to do that. And so we are going to start our new teaching today, which is a continuation of our What is the Bible series, which is our foundational series that we've been creating to help people understand the Bible and the ancient Near Eastern context there, and then also to use as a foundation as we move forward with teaching in the Bible and using the ancient Near Eastern context to kind of illuminate things that are going on behind the scenes in the scriptures. Sorry, you got really up in your face there. So this is a part of our What is the Bible's Main Character sub-series in What is the Bible. You can get all this content. I'm going to be referring to things that we've taught over the last 4 weeks, things that we've been teaching for 15 weeks now. This is the 15th part of this series. And of course, these notes that I'm reading off of are all in the description section on the description section of this video. Sorry, I had a brain fart there. And so you can go ahead and click on today's teaching, and hopefully it won't kick you out of YouTube, whatever your browser is, but you can follow along here or just reference it later. And then all the series, there is our recommended resource page, and then a donation slot if you'd like to help us out here on Critical Thinking Aloud. Sorry, I didn't plug in my mic, so hopefully I heard some of that stuff. Probably a little, yeah. But so we have our recommended resources, which we're going to get into now. And so let's just jump into this Yahweh's Spirit, and this is a continuation of the What is the Bible's Main Character. So I just wanted to welcome y'all to this next installment of our Yahweh teaching as the Bible's main character on Critical Thinking Out Loud. And this is a continuation of our foundation series on What is the Bible, as I mentioned earlier. So let me see. Yep. Okay. We love to teach others about the value of interpreting the Bible through the ancient Near Eastern context of the biblical authors. And this passion has been born out of our own recognition of the value this way of interpreting the scriptures in its original context can bring to one's Bible studies. And I personally can attest to that. I'm sorry. It has really helped me in my Bible studies, and I do it all the time in my Turkish classes here, where I'm writing a book in Turkish, which is all about this, and then just even in my personal studies, which I've been going through the book of Esther here. And again, this is one of our recommended resources, which we're about to talk about. But the book of Esther, I have felt the Lord speaking to me, is something that's going on that we're watching in the events of our world this day, and how God had played a massive role in Esther's day, and I feel he's doing the same thing today. So I've been reading along with this in my personal study, and I just love it. And so hopefully, or my hope is that in this series, that our readers or our community will build a portfolio about the ancient Near East to use as a guide while studying the scripture. Now, this portfolio is a proverbial one that's in our minds. We're going to be relying on that today, as you will see. We believe that the best way to engage with any content is within its own immediate context. Therefore, if you haven't been able to go through the other teachings in this series, we suggest you do so first by clicking here, especially today. I say this every week, but we are literally building off of the last 4 weeks. I mean, we're going to be referencing it massively heavy. We're going to be looking at the same scriptures. So if you haven't done that, go ahead and just go through that material before you go through this. It will help you out a lot. And today we will be continuing our study on Yahweh as the Bible's main character by looking at Yahweh's Spirit revealed in tandem of both the visible and invisible forms of Yahweh throughout the Old Testament narrative. So how are we going to learn? We talk about this every week. In this teaching, we will be looking at the topic of the Spirit of Yahweh in the ancient Near Eastern biblical author's worldview. As I've done in the past with all the other teachings almost, I want to quote from scholarly sources to make my point. And I do this in hopes that you will see this isn't just my interpretation of Scripture, but that this is a view steeped in academia. And I do this because this is new to a lot of you guys. It was new to me. And if I wouldn't have had the scholarly notes or the peer-reviewed articles, I don't know if I would have adopted it in my worldview as fast as I did. And that's because this isn't just me. This isn't just some guy on the internet. This is literal scholarly work. And one of the problems with Christianity, or Christian teaching per se, is that there's this gap of information. So you have scholars up here who speak in scholarly lingo, and they're academic. And then you have well-intending pastors who go to seminary and they study things, but then it doesn't trickle down a lot in between these two. And so you can have a lot of scholarly, peer-reviewed, solid theology that never got to the pastors because they're busy with other stuff, mainly pastoral stuff, and kind of just recapitulating the same teachings over and over here, that this information never trickles down. And we're trying to fill that gap there by just standing in the gap and standing on the shoulders of better men who have come before me and saying, hey, look, this has already been talked about before. And that's why I use these resources. We will be using our two amazing sources. We highly recommend Faith Life Study Bible. This is an amazing resource that is free for you to download and use the app on your iPad, on your phone, on whatever, or use it online. To download this app or use this resource online, click on the link there. And this resource is available in print, but that's for, you have to pay to get that. I haven't actually purchased that yet. I do have it on our recommended resources because I use the one on the iPad so much, but it's free. There's really no excuse except for maybe just a lack of enthusiasm for you to get that. And so hopefully I can encourage you to go and get that one. And then when I do go back to the States, I'm going to purchase that, and then I'll be able to tell you my experience with it. But my favorite is the NIV Cultural Background Study Bible. This is my favorite resource for gaining a better understanding for the ancient Near Eastern worldview of the biblical authors. This is available in many different variations, all of which you can find on our resource page by clicking there. Now, this is the NIV Cultural Background Study Bible. They have the NRSV Cultural Background Study Bible, or the New King James. They have them all. The ESV, you don't have to go with the NIV. I just do for this purpose, and I've just been using the NIV for a while. I don't have a problem with it because I am usually looking on other translations anyway online. And so, you can get both of those. You can get one for free, so there's really no excuse, but you can get the other one, which would be worth it for sure. It'd be worth it for you to purchase that, whatever it costs. Even if it was, I'd say even up to $100, you will get it back in full every day as you're using this thing. Couldn't recommend it enough. So let's hop in here as we're just going to go throughout this teaching. So the Old and the New. Many of us are familiar with the invisible Yahweh in the Old Testament. For sure, if you guys have been going along with us, sorry, this thing needs to come down a little bit. Many of you who have been going along, wobbly, who have been going along with us now for a couple months or even just a couple weeks, you're going to know about the invisible Yahweh because I've been talking about him a lot. But this is the invisible creator God of the Israelite community, who is later described by Jesus and his followers as the Father. Generally speaking, Christians know much less about the second visible form of Yahweh revealed in the Old Testament. That's what we've been talking about for the last 4 weeks. In my experience, Christians know even less about the relationship between these two forms, the visible and the invisible form of Yahweh, and its relation to the Spirit of God in the Old Testament. We probably think about this in the New Testament. I'm breaking in here. Probably think about this in the New Testament, but how does it relate in the Old Testament? I don't know a lot of people who have actually spent time thinking about this just lay level people, and so that's why we want to cover it. And again, it's just because of nomenclatures or how we kind of think about the Bible that the New Testament brings a new theology, but that's not the case at all. Our teaching on the visible Yahweh centered around the ancient Near Eastern biblical authors' description of the invisible God revealing himself visibly to humanity through the theophany of a man. In the Old Testament, this man theophany is described in 4 ways. Sorry about that, y'all. Let me just do that. Over the past weeks, we covered the 4 ways which the visible Yahweh is described throughout the Old Testament in human form. These are the Word, the angel of the Lord, the name, and the rider on the clouds. Now, if anybody's following us there, anything that's glowing, hyperlinked in blue is going to take you to another part of our website. And so if you want to know about the Word, click on that. It'll take you to that teaching, the angel of the Lord, the name, or the rider on the cloud. And you can go ahead and do that if you haven't heard that stuff yet, and then come back to this one later. This week we'll be covering how the ancient Near Eastern biblical authors describe the relationship between the invisible and visible forms of Yahweh and the Spirit. So we're going to be talking about the Spirit. We're going to be talking about the Trinity, actually, in the Old Testament. Now, don't worry, during the past 4 teachings on the visible Yahweh, I've been letting you guys know not to worry about the language we were using concerning the binitarian Godhead, 2-person Godhead. We see Trinitarian, binitarian Godhead. That's from the ancient Israelite theology. And since then, I had been asked the question by a viewer, was critical thinking allowed teaching something that departs from Orthodox Christian teaching about the Trinitarian nature of the Godhead? This is a legitimate question stemming out of the binitarian, 2-person Godhead language used from the ancient Israelite theology. So I had, don't worry, and now be happy. I really appreciate this critical thinking aloud. I really appreciate our critical thinking out loud community. For sure. I love you guys. I love hearing from you guys. And hearing from you guys at any time concerning anything is a great joy. This question is no different. I really appreciated this viewer's concern, and my answer to him is the same that I'm going to give you now. Don't worry. I can assure you that we are not departing from Christian orthodoxy regarding the Trinity. Instead, the opposite is true. We are convinced that we are returning back to the biblical author's orthodox view regarding the Trinity, which is derived from the Old Testament binitarian Godhead theology of the ancient Israelites. So yeah, I just want to make this clear that when this concern was raised to me, I said, actually, it's that thing that I was talking about. We have scholarly information concerning binitarian/Trinitarian theology in the Old Testament, and then we have just your average pastor. And this academic information has not trickled down, and if it has, it hasn't been in a sufficient amount or in a way that people could understand, or a lot of the stuff that I look at is peer-reviewed articles and stuff like that, or these notes and these resources that cost money, and so you have to go out and you have to go searching for it, and so it just never trickled down here. And so a lot of pastors never teach on the Trinitarian roots of the Old Testament, maybe because they never even know. And that's not faulting anybody. That's just saying the information wasn't there, or was lacking, or the pastor just never had the opportunity to look into it. And so the Trinitarian roots of the Old Testament, I would say, and I don't want to, I'm not demeaning anybody here because this was me in the past, is that we just kind of think, well, Jesus, he's bringing a fulfillment to things in the Old Testament. And so maybe there's just this new way of looking at God, and we kind of just think that the Trinity starts in the New Testament. That's not the case at all, because he said, I came to fulfill, not to erase or not to, get rid of anything. And so he's fulfilling the binitarian Godhead, Trinitarian Godhead theological concepts of the Old Testament in the New. And so, like I told my friend who brought up these concerns, I said, don't worry. We're actually filling that gap where just ask yourself and be honest, Where did the Trinity come from? And if you can't answer that question completely, or if you haven't really even thought about that, then you should listen up in this teaching, because I'm taking you back to the Orthodox roots of the Jewish first century believing in Jesus community. And I'm saying that these monotheistic Yahweh worshipers also worship Jesus and the Spirit, which is they're finding in their Old Testament, because their Bible is the Old Testament. And so this is not a departure from orthodoxy at all. This is a return. This is a revival to orthodoxy, and this is going to be proven today. So this is one of the many examples which highlights the benefits of studying the ancient Near Eastern context of the biblical authors. I just couldn't say it enough, and you guys probably are sick of hearing it, but that's what Critical Thinking Out Loud exists for, guys, and hopefully it encouraged you guys to get back into here and check it out. So God chose to appear to us. The Trinity that we have come to know as Christians is rooted in the Old Testament binitarian Godhead theology, and ever since the beginning, the invisible God has chosen to make himself known to humans through his visible manifestation in the form of a man. Before his incarnation, Jesus, the visible Yahweh, was known in the Old Testament as the second person of the Trinity by 4 different descriptions. In the 4 weeks of our mini-series on the visible Yahweh, this is the past 4 weeks that we just went through, we have discussed all of Yahweh's man theophany motifs. The word, the angel of the Lord, the name, and the rider on the clouds, which are all used in the Old Testament to describe the invisible God appearing in a visible form to humans as a man. Recall this quote from one of our recommended resources. Theophanies set the precedent for Jesus. They help make sense of why and how God chose to appear in human form. That's from Faith Life Study Bible, that in the article Theophany in the Old Testament. That's that free resource. Go get it. Just want to remind you guys, theophany. Remember, theophany is a visible manifestation of a deity revealed to humanity. Throughout these teachings, we have been looking at the ancient Near Eastern view of theophany and the role it plays in the pantheon of a nation. Here is another quote from that same resource. Since people cannot possibly process God's nature as a disembodied, formless spirit, theophany allows God to make his presence known in a physical way that people can discern through their senses. That's from Faith Life Study Bible in the article Theophany in the Old Testament. Go and get that. It's a free resource. God uses theophanies many times throughout the Hebrew Bible. Fire, a still small voice, a storm cloud are only a couple examples of God communicating to humanity via theophanies. I'm going to break in here now. We cannot discern the invisible God, and if we could, we'd be dead, is what the Bible tells us. So God has to use theophanies to reveal him, or God chose, not has to, he chose to use theophanies to reveal himself to us, i.e. the fire, the cloud, the fire, a pillar of smoke, the whirlwind, we hear about that a lot. But God also uses the theophany of a man. That's what we talked about for the last 4 weeks. The Spirit. As Christians, we have probably thought about the nature of the Trinity a good amount. I know that I have. I know that it's hard sometimes. And those thoughts are being, how does the members relate to each other? If anything, what can we compare the Trinity to? And what is it like? All these questions we've probably asked ourselves. But have you ever asked yourself the question, where did the concept of the Trinity come from? This is an important question. This changed a lot for me. Where did this theological concept originate? Where are its origins? Or how did the first believers in the New Testament, all of which were strict monotheistic Jewish converts, accept this notion as being true? Again, we have to think about that, guys. These guys are Yahweh worshipers. There is only one God. Hear this, O Israel. The Lord is one. That's called the Shema. That is Deuteronomy 6, I'm pretty sure, 6 and 7. And it's hear this, O Israel, the Lord your God is one. And so one. But that's not the case even for these guys, because they have a binitarian view, a two forms in heaven. Yes, one, but two, like the Trinity. Yes, three, but one, one and three. It's kind of mind-boggling, but it gets easier as we break this down, because this is the foundation of Christian Trinitarian theology, what we know about God. Don't get tripped up on theology, guys. Trinitarian theology. Theology only means what do we know about God in Trinitarian as revealed in a triune nature. Triune nature is rooted in the Old Testament. So the foundations of Christian Trinitarian theology is rooted in the Old Testament. Yahweh revealed as three persons in the Trinity is not a New Testament concept, but is a theology firmly established in the Hebrew Bible. That's what we're going to prove here today, guys. As we have done in our other teachings on Yahweh, we will be looking at familiar passages of Scripture, some of which we have even looked at in detail as recently as our Invisible Yahweh miniseries. So just the last teachings. Today we want to reevaluate these texts to see the Spirit's role in these stories. We want to keep our minds open and critically think about these scriptures, since most likely we have already formed certain understanding of these familiar texts. Doing so will help us draw new conclusions from the passages, some of which we may have never entertained before. So let's hop into this. This is where we're going to go. This will probably be a little bit longer, 40 minutes plus, but this is a great teaching, and we're kind of really wrapping up our Yahweh series here. Moses. So let's check out this. This is this is Numbers 11:23 through 31. Again, if you're on this page, you're going to read it with me, but or you can just click on the link. But Numbers 11:23 through 31. The Lord answers Moses, Is the Lord's arm too short? Now you will see whether or not what I say will come true for you. So Moses went out and told the people what the Lord had said. He brought together 70 of their elders and had them stand around the tent. Then the Lord came down in the cloud and spoke with him. And he took some of the power of the Spirit that was on him and put it on the 70 elders. When the Spirit rested on them, they prophesied, but did not do so again. However, two men whose names were Eldad and Medad had arrived in the camp. They were listed among the elders, but did not go out to the tent. Yet the Spirit also rested on them, and they prophesied in the camp. A young man ran and told Moses, Eldad and Medad are prophesying in the camp. Joshua, son of Nun, who had been Moses' aide since youth, spoke up and said, Moses, my Lord, stop them. But Moses replied, Are you jealous for my sake? I wish that all the Lord's people were prophets, and that the Lord would put his Spirit on them. Then Moses and the elders of Israel returned to the camp. Now a wind went out from the Lord and drove the quails from the sea. It scattered them up to 2 cubits deep all around the camp and as far as a day's walk in any direction. That's Numbers 11:23 through 31. Let us reflect on what's going on in this passage. Did you notice who appears here with Moses and the 70 elders? We first read about Moses talking with the Lord. Presumably, this is the visible form of Yahweh, since we have no anthropomorphic language here apart from the idiomatic phrase, the Lord's arm. Now, the Hebrew idiom, the Lord's arm, is a reference to God's power and ability to accomplish what he has declared. This should not be confused with the literal or physical arm of the visible Yahweh. While the visible Yahweh has arms, here the Hebrew idiom clearly is being used to challenge Moses' doubt that the Lord would be able to provide enough meat for the massive body of people. However, next we read that the Lord came down in the cloud and spoke with him. Guys, remember the last teaching, the rider on the cloud. There's a reason why I'm building all these things off of each other. Here it is. This is the appearance of the visible Yahweh onto the scene. So you have the invisible Yahweh, now you have the visible Yahweh. Everything we have gone through over the past 6 teachings, 6 weeks, we are going to see emerge in these texts we are covering today. It's time for us to use that portfolio we have equipped you with. That portfolio we talked about in the beginning. The Lord in the clouds is the visible Yahweh, is the invisible Yahweh in visible form, i.e. the visible Yahweh. This theophany of the Lord was visible to everyone there, all these 70 elders, everybody there. The visible Yahweh is present in this scene when he comes in the cloud. But here we also see a third member of the Trinity. Here we go, the Trinity in the Old Testament show up with the Spirit of the Lord at work. There is a connection between the visible Yahweh and the Spirit being made in this passage. After the Lord in the cloud comes, the Spirit is able to rest on these 70 elders. At the very least, the author seems to be communicating that whatever happened to these elders is directly tied to their experience with both the visible Yahweh in the clouds in combination with the moving of Yahweh's Spirit upon them. The invisible Yahweh, the visible Yahweh who appears in the clouds, and the Spirit all emerge in this account, leaving us with a clear Trinitarian framework of the Godhead to reflect on in the Old Testament. Boom! There it is, guys. We're going to keep on going, but that right there is what we're talking about. There is a Trinity, a Trinitarian Godhead in the Old Testament. So not to negate the binitarian Godhead, because that's the theology of the ancient Israelite biblical authors, but we're saying where they say a binitarian and then they just kind of have the Spirit of God floating, we're like, well, later people claim this as Trinitarian theology. Later converts to Christianity, kind of, because the Trinity is a New Testament word. It's not in the Bible at all, but it's in the New Testament era. But these three, invisible, visible, Spirit, are in this passage with Moses in Deuteronomy. So just as we say there, it leaves us with a Trinitarian framework of the Godhead to reflect on in the Old Testament. It's there, guys. So I hope you guys are enjoying this. Let's check out Gideon Judges 6. We checked this out 3 teachings ago on the angel of the Lord. This is the same chapter that we used to identify the invisible Yahweh revealed visibly through the man theophany as the angel of the Lord. If you have forgotten the details, you can go check out this teaching by clicking on the hyperlink. On the heels of Gideon discovering that he has been called to save Israel through an encounter with both the invisible and visible forms of Yahweh, we read this. So I'm going to, before I quote that, just remind you guys real quick. Gideon sees a man, and he starts talking with this man, and then he gets commissioned by the angel of the Lord. But he doesn't know it's the angel of the Lord, and he doubts, and then he says, can I sacrifice? And they're under this tree, which is connected with deities. And so then he goes to get his sacrifice, and then the angel of the Lord burns up the sacrifice, and he gets scared. He says, I'm going to die because I saw the angel of the Lord. And then the Lord, once he burns up the sacrifice, the angel of the Lord disappears. But then the Lord replies to him, no, you're not going to die. So you have the angel of the Lord there, both of them, the visible and the invisible. And this is in the same chapter, guys. Just like 10 verses later, I think within 10 verses, then the Spirit of the Lord came on Gideon, and he blew a trumpet, summoning the Abiezrites to follow him. That's Judges 6:34. In Judges chapter 6, not only do we have the binitarian Godhead language of the ancient Israelites, but also we see what is later known as the Trinitarian Godhead at work in Gideon's calling. Before we proceed, I want to give you a little bit more information on the Spirit's moving on people, which I found to be interesting. Now, this is just, we've been doing this over the last, 8 teachings in ancient Near Eastern context. Here's a quote from one of our recommended resources on the moving of the Spirit in Judges chapter 6, 34, which we just looked at, the Spirit of the Lord came on Gideon. According to the normal use of this form of this Hebrew verb to clothe, the Hebrew reads, the Spirit of the Lord put on Gideon, suggesting that the Spirit wears Gideon, i.e., the Spirit is inside him, rather than Gideon wearing the Spirit as an external force. I think I got that wrong. As an external force. This raises the question whether the Spirit functions as an internal or external force. A statement in an Akkadian wisdom text raises the same issue. The demon has clothed himself in my body as with a garment. Sleep covers me like a net. One Akkadian text reads, he, the Asaku demon, develops the miserable man like a garment. End quote. The notes go on to say, quote, the Spirit of the Lord usually appears in Judges to facilitate the calling of an army. Since Israel has no central authority, only Yahweh has the ability to call out the tribes. And his authority is recognized in anyone who does so. This is in the NIV Cultural Background Study Bible on notes on Judges 6, 3 through 34, page 421. So we see that there is a precedent in the ancient Near East for a divine being spirit to come onto a person to empower them. This is exactly what we see happen to Gideon. After his encounter with the visible and invisible forms of Yahweh, the Spirit comes upon him to summon an army. So we have Akkadian text there, which we read. That was about a demon, but just forget about that because it is a divine being. And that's all you need to worry about. We're talking about a divine being empowering Gideon here, and we have a divine, albeit malevolent being in Akkadian text, putting on a human being. And so I just thought that was interesting, that it's actually the Spirit coming inside or being worn by, and it says you'll be clothed with the power on high. So this is all ancient Near Eastern context here. Let's check out Job. This is Job 26:13. By his breath the skies became fair. His hands pierced the gliding serpent. That's the NIV. But the New King James says this, by his Spirit he adorned the heavens. His hand pierced the fleeing serpent. New King James. And that's Job 26:13. Breath, Spirit. Looking at these two different translations, we can notice something about the way each translator chose to translate this word into English. Both are correct and mean the same thing, because in the Hebrew language, the word ruach can mean both spirit and breath. This same word can also be translated into mind or wind as well. For a visual illustration of this concept, check out this amazing short video on the Spirit or Ruach by our friends over at the Bible Project by clicking on the link there. The Bible Project is awesome. We really love them. We put them in a bunch of our teachings. It's like a 4 or 5 minute video, but it's a beautiful illustration of the Ruach and how it's translated and why it's translated in these four. So go over there and check that out. His hand. It is interesting that in the second half of this verse, we have anthropomorphic language associated with piercing the fleeing serpent. If you recall our earlier study, we made a statement that only the visible Yahweh has as the man theophany has hands. I don't want to get too off. I don't want to get off on a tangent, but this piercing of the fleeing serpent is tied up in Yahweh's rule over creation and chaos in the creation narrative. We will get into this and many more topics like this subject in later installments as we progress on Critical Thinking Out Loud. It's kind of like last week when I talked about how biblical authors, they would take concepts known in the ancient Near East, and then they would, not in Baal's place, so in the Baal cycle, they would take Baal out, and then they would put Yahweh there. Or like a really famous one is on Mount Zaphon in the north is God's mountain. Well, we know his is actually in the south. It's Baal's mountain is Mount Zaphon in the ancient, Canaanite and Mesopotamian, their mind, they have a mountain for God. God's mountain is really Zion. That's where Jesus is coming back to. But because of this polemic, that's the word that we used last week, because they use polemic, they take out the deity's name and then they put in Yahweh. And it was to say, actually, this deity is fake, false, and phony. This is the real one. And they stick it in there. And so we're going to get into stuff like that, because this is really what's going on with the gliding serpent and the Leviathan, and the Leviathan, and there's just so much cool stuff that we're going to get into. But first, we want to put down what we're doing right now, this foundation series, so that we have something to call back onto. So in future installments, if you stick with me, we're going to get into this kind of stuff, and it's just awesome. Our thesis for today is made clear in this verse, that the invisible form, as well as the corporal form, corporal meaning just body parts in a form of a man, corporal form of the visible Yahweh, along with the Spirit, are responsible for the creation of the heavens and subduing of chaotic forces. I.e., we have a Trinity in the Old Testament, guys. It's there. Here comes my favorite one, Ezekiel. Ezekiel 8 through 16 is probably some of my favorite passages in the Bible, just because of the brashness of it. Today we have a lot of kind of people against brash talking and brash speaking, whether it's a political figure or whoever. There can't be brash talk. Well, that's not Ezekiel, and you'll be highly offended, especially by Ezekiel 16, which one day we'll get there. And just brass isn't even the word, guys. It's explicit. It would have an explicit and be labeled, offensive by most people today. But it's because of what was going on in Ezekiel's day, and it was needed in chapter 16. You can go check it out yourself. But today we're going to be looking at chapter 8, and I just love this here, guys. It really drives home our point. Chapter 8, 1 through 5. In the 6th year of the 6th month, on the 5th day, while I was sitting in my house and the elders of Judah were sitting before me, the hand of the sovereign Lord came on me there. I looked, and I saw a figure like that of a man. From what appeared to be his waist down was like fire, and from there up his appearance was as bright as glowing metal. He stretched out what looked like a hand and took me by the hair of my head. The Spirit lifted me up between the earth and the heaven, and in visions of God he took me to Jerusalem, to the entrance of the north gate in the inner court, where the idol that provokes to jealousy stood. And there before me was the glory of the God of Israel, as in the vision I had seen in the plain. And then he said to me, Son of man, look towards the north. So I looked, and in the entrance of the north of the gate of the altar, I saw this idol of jealousy. And that's Ezekiel 8, 1 through 5. He goes on to see a whole bunch of crazy stuff, and this is basically why Yahweh left the temple, along with the things in chapter 16, which until I get there, I won't bring up, but I will, and I'll be just as brass when we go through that as Ezekiel is, just to really drive home the point. But this is a great passage for us to look at together to cover the topic of the Trinity in the Old Testament. Here we see all three members of the Godhead present. There is one with a figure like that of a man, the Spirit, and the glory of the God of Israel. It says in the plain here, I'm just breaking in real quick, that I saw on the plain. He's talking about in Ezekiel 1 where he's sitting by the river in Babylon, and then he's shocked because the glory, the Shekinah glory, in the Merkabah. So God's riding on his throne. He's kind of driving his car, if you want to use language like that. And Ezekiel's just shocked to his core because what are you doing outside of the Jerusalem temple? That's his house on the earth. That's his footstool. And God's like, I'm out. And and Ezekiel has an experience with him there. And then all the way up until chapter 16, we just see he leaves. He shows Ezekiel when he leaves. He goes out the east gate, I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, he goes out, the east gate, because he rolls all over to Babylon and sees Ezekiel sitting there. So this is just great stuff. We're going to get into all this later. But this is just, I just wanted to give you that little, what's the plane all about. This is amazing, and I hope it's a real eye-opener for those of you who have never thought about this before. The invisible Yahweh, the visible Yahweh revealed via the man theophany, together with the Spirit, are all present in this vision that Ezekiel is experiencing. The anthropomorphic language of a hand being the vehicle which transport Ezekiel by the hair not only bears relevance to our study today on the Trinitarian nature of God revealed in the Old Testament, but also confirms the value of our ongoing studies of the deep theological roots found in connection to the ancient Near East. I hope that sinks in, because this is like the whole reason critical thinking out loud exists. You have the Trinity in the Old Testament, and then this is all backed up by ancient Near Eastern concepts or worldview or context. This is just simply breathtaking. Now let's take a minute to check this out. Here's a quote that will help us realize the significance. Quote, "It took me by the hair of my head. The vision of the departure of the glory of the Lord from the Jerusalem temple reflects formal elements of a definite type of vision known in the Akkadian literature. A shining figure that had the appearance of fire took Ezekiel by the lock of his hair. A similar expression is found in the vision of the netherworld by the Assyrian crown prince. The tablet comes from Ashur and is dated around 670 BC. The composition describes how an Assyrian prince, perhaps Ashurbanipal, or for unknown reasons, wishes to see the underworld. To this end, he sacrifices to Eshkigal, the queen of the netherworld, and prays to her and to Era/Nergal, her consort, husband or wife. His request is granted, and in a dream, he receives a vision of the netherworld. He sees Era/Nergal as a shining figure with lightning flashes from his arms. Era/Nergal then takes the prince by the hair and carries him. The same expression occurs in the Mesopotamian myth Nergal in Eshkirgal, where it is said that Nergal sees Eshkirgal by the hair. End quote. The NIV Cultural Background Study Bible's notes on Ezekiel 8:3, and that's page 1343. This scene is immensely helpful for us to understand the relationship of the binitarian Godhead known to ancient Israelites. Both the invisible Yahweh represented in the glory of the God of Israel and the visible Yahweh as the shining man theophany are interacting with Ezekiel. Ezekiel's experience also gives us a glimpse at the inner workings of what we now refer to as Trinitarian theology. Both forms of Yahweh, along with the animated spirit of God accompanying with the animated spirit of God accompany Ezekiel at the temple in Jerusalem. So both forms of Yahweh, along with the animated spirit of God, accompany Ezekiel at the temple in Jerusalem. All this, and we have it framed in the ancient Near Eastern context to boot. So this is just amazing, guys. In conclusion, not only would the Israelite community be able to relate to this text, but the surrounding nations would have had a theological context for this experience as well. This passage of the Old Testament clearly defines for us a Trinitarian Godhead in its ancient Near Eastern context of the biblical authors is simply amazing. Critical thinking out loud. Guys, this is our sweet spot. We are totally in our element here. This is why we've done 14 weeks of this stuff back to back to back, is because now we're just connecting dots. We've already talked about all this stuff. Nothing here is new except for just bringing the Spirit. We've already seen these things before, but just bring the Spirit into this. And so I know I sound like a broken record, and we sound like a broken record because of how frequently we refer to the importance of learning about the ancient Near Eastern context of the biblical authors. But this is exactly why, guys, because then with this information, you can see that there's a Trinitarian Godhead in the Old Testament. Without this knowledge, you would not see this. And that's why a lot of people don't see this, is because they're interpreting the scriptures through a 14th century, a 10th century, dare I even say 5th to 4th with Augustine century worldview. And it's not adequate. 4th and 5th century, you're in Latin, you're not in the Greek, you're not in the original context. We want 1st century theological concepts, orthodox concepts. And these guys, 4th, 5th century, those guys' Bible is the New Testament's included. 1st century, it's the Old Testament. They don't have a New Testament, basically. They might have a couple of letters from Paul or from somebody, but they're looking at their Old Testament, calling that their Bible. And then they're, completing the rest of the canon's a loose word that I'll use there, but the rest of what we know is the New Testament canon, at least. But they have the apocryphal writings, and they have a bunch of other things that they held valuable themselves. Excuse me, I've been talking a lot. So this is exactly why we keep talking about there is so much value in interpreting the scriptures in its original context. Excuse me. And I hope that we've made that point today. We did not inherit a theology concerning the triune nature of God, which was invented in the 1st century, shortly after Christ was put to death and resurrected. On the contrary, we have proved today by using only a handful of scriptures that the Trinitarian theology of the New Testament is only a continuation of that which is established in the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament. Yahweh has always been revealed as triune in nature, but it is only in the New Testament that we see the visible Yahweh embodied in the man Jesus Christ. The second power, if we want to use that loosely, the second power or member, or however you want to parse that, of the Trinity, who was revealed to humanity throughout the Old Testament in the form of Yahweh's theophany of a man via the Word, the angel of the Lord, the name, and the rider on the clouds, joins humanity when he becomes fully man in the New Testament. The God-man, Christ Jesus, will be the focus of our next installment of Critical Thinking Out Loud's main Characters of the Bible series. So that's what we're going to get into next week, guys. I delayed it 1 week so I could do all this with the Spirit and show you and put people's hearts and minds to rest that we're going to take back orthodoxy, and we're going to, we're going to go through a Reformation, because the Reformation in the 15th, 15th, 16th, 17th, all that kind of stuff that people use today is faulty. And I'm not saying that lightly, and I'm not saying that all of it is just bunk, but we have way better resources to be able to take us back to what these guys could never even imagine. And, I'm not being proud here. I'm just saying we need to drop these 15th, 16th century, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, and for sure 20th and 21st century interpretations of the Bible, and the 5th and 4th century. We can take those things and then filter them back through the ancient Near Eastern context and see if they hold water. Because we have so much more information. We have all these ancient, Dead Sea Scrolls is what I bring up all the time. We didn't have the Dead Sea Scrolls until 1947, and they weren't translated until, I think it was late 70s and early 80s. So we're only talking about 40 years that we have resources that these guys had no idea about. So it's kind of insane to think we should just keep on interpreting the scriptures through this dark lens where we have a pure light. Why read in the dark on things that you don't need to anymore? So again, there's lots of great stuff from these writers, but that needs to be filtered through the ancient Near Eastern context. So don't want to rant because we've gone long enough, but I just want to cite this stuff. Faith Life Study Bible by J.D. Barry, Bellingham, Washington, Lagos Bible Software 2012, and the NIV Cultural Background Study Bible in Grand Rapids, Michigan's USA, Vonder Van 2016. Call for an action, guys. We just want to ask you if you feel led to click on the donation. We have our recommended resource page. You can go get the recommended resources if you want. But if you want to help out Critical Thinking Out Loud, you can also click on the donation tab, and that will help us out. We love teaching you guys. We do it pro bono for free. I don't mind doing that at all. But if you'd like to help with the expenses on producing this content, and if you feel blessed by it, then please click on the donation tab on the page or in the video description. And we just want to say thank you, guys. We love you guys. We'll be back here next week on Critical Thinking Out Loud. My schedule's up in the air right now because we're changing days on, because of restrictions here on the weekend. We're changing days on which day we're meeting as a church. And so I don't know what day I'll be doing the live streams, but when I have kind of a schedule set out, I'll let you guys know. But there'll be one next week on Jesus. And we just wanted to thank you guys so much for joining us on Critical Thinking Out Loud. We love you guys. What would be helpful too is if you like this series, to share it with your friends and give us some feedback. I'd love to hear from you guys. And we'll see you next time when we critically think out loud together.